Hey Broncos fans, Sam Brown here with the Broncos Breakdown. We got some news and rumors on deck for you guys today, but first, it's draft week, baby. If you're excited for the NFL draft, I want you to hit that thumbs up right now on this video. Listen, a couple thousand of you guys at least every single time watch this video. There's no way, 100, 150 of y'all aren't excited for the draft? Come on. Go ahead, smash that like in the comment section, and let's jump into today's Broncos Breakdown video. You're watching the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Sam Brown, and got some Broncos news and rumors on deck for you, talking about George Paton's press conference from last week, and kind of to some snippets that we caught here and there that I wanted to touch a little bit more on with you guys, starting with his plans for next week's NFL draft. Obviously hinted at some of his plans during that press conference, held a lot of secrets kind of close to the chest right now, which is completely understandable for his first offseason and his first draft as the Broncos GM. But just a few days away from the NFL draft, I think we're starting to get a little bit of a glimpse of what George Paton is looking for, and we'll dive into the two positions which he opened up a little bit more on. And of course, one of them is the quarterback position. There's no doubt about that, and no surprise, right? But first, I want to jump a little bit into his philosophy and the way he's going to kind of approach this draft. He talked about his draft philosophy with the Minnesota Vikings, where he spent his time before the Denver Broncos, said, if a player is there, we were going to take him. But if there were three players we still liked, we were going to try and trade back and accumulate capital. I guess the philosophy is the more darts, the better chance you have to hit the bullseye. You know how it is. If you have 7 picks and you hit on half, that's not great. You get 3 players. We always like to have 10 plus and just have more darts. 10 plus picks right around the range he wants to be. Right now, the Broncos right under that at 9 picks going into the NFL draft on Thursday. Obviously, the number 9 overall pick. Number 40, 71 in round 3, a round 4 and a round 5 pick. Though you got a few more picks on the back end, though, of the NFL draft as we look to the rest of day 3. 3 7th rounders, one from the New York Giants, the Isaac Yiadom trade, and another one from the Cleveland Browns, both 7th round picks. So 3 7th rounders for the Broncos and a 6th, but definitely a team that, if a player like Paton said is not on the board really that he's looking at, and he's got a couple of options that he likes, maybe trade back, find some better value, and accumulate some more draft capital. Now let's touch on the quarterback situation, as George Paton did on Thursday and as several reporters asked about. Paton has pretty much said what he said the entire time. He said, we're really high on Drew. I like seeing Drew here every morning when I come in. He's working hard. He's trending in the right direction. As you know, he has a lot of talent. I think he's becoming a better pro, but we're still going to look at the quarterback position. I've said since I got here, we want to bring in competition. That's the goal, and we plan on doing that. Shocker, right? I mean, nobody's surprised by George Paton saying that. This has been day one onward for George Paton. He's said that he wants to bring in competition. For a lot of the time, we thought that was going to be some sort of veteran, an Andy Dalton, a Tyrod Taylor, one of those types of quarterbacks. Still hasn't panned out like that. The depth chart is still the same right now as it was week 17 last season. And whether that changes, I think, is really going to be whether they draft a quarterback in round 1. I really doubt that those later rounds is where George Paton's really going to get aggressive at the quarterback position. But you never know, and it leads me to my next question for you guys. It's sort of a question, but if you want Denver to draft a quarterback in next week's draft, like this video, doesn't even have to be in the first round. Maybe some of you Kellen Mond truthers can come out and expose yourselves. Some of you Davis Mills lovers can go ahead and smash that like button down below. But I'm just curious where you guys are standing on this. So if you want Denver to draft a quarterback next week, give this video a thumbs up. Now, another position that George Paton touched on a little bit was the offensive line. And this is interesting, I really thought, from Paton. He said, quote, I like our offensive line. We probably need a little more depth. I like the draft, and I like the draft at guard and tackle. I think you could get a good offensive lineman in the first 3 rounds and maybe even 4 to 6. I think our offensive line, if you had to rank them in the league, they are in the top 3rd. We just need to add depth, and we need to add competition. That's pretty cookie cutter stuff again from George Paton here, and I think that this offensive line right now could use some depth. That is something that I've talked about here on the Broncos Breakdown time and time again. I think Garrett Bowles is locked in right now. I've talked about Reisner and Glasgow, how I like them, but I feel like there could be just a little more upside there. Same at center with Cushenberry. And Jawan James, a big unknown going into this season, having only played a couple of games since signing that 2-year contract, or that 3-year contract 2 years ago. George Paton has spoken highly of Ja'Wuan James, but nonetheless, as you look to some of these offensive tackle prospects and offensive line prospects as we get into day 2, I think there's a couple guys worth looking at. Creed Humphrey's a guy that I got to follow a lot from my time at the University of Oklahoma covering the football team. A solid option on the interior. Alex Leatherwood, I think, could play guard or tackle. Has a strong frame. Quinn Miners will be on the inside. A late riser in the draft boards. Dylan Radins, an option at right tackle. Walker Little as well, a developmental guy. These are guys I'm looking at behind Ja'Wuan James, potentially over time, maybe replacing Ja'Wuan James at right tackle. But nonetheless, there are plenty of options in day 2. It's a quality offensive line class across the board where you can find the right value in day 2 if there's a guy that George Paton is really high on. All right, we'll wrap it up on this topic with this question. Name a player you want the Broncos to draft in the comments section. Let's hear from you guys down below. It can be round 1, round 3, round 7, any round you want, any player you want. Just shout them out in the comments section, show them some love, and let me know. All right, be sure to subscribe, as always, to the Broncos Breakdown because it's draft week and things are only going to pick up here at Chat Sports. We're going to have tons of videos here this week, whether it's me in front of the camera or my guy Tom right now, who's behind the scenes. A little switch of positions right here between me and Tom, but for the most part, I might hop back behind the desk and let him get some of the love. But whether it's myself, Tom, Mitch, Chase, Harrison, we're going to bring you all the latest around the Denver Broncos. So Broncos country, be sure to subscribe, hit that big red button, or go to youtube.com/Broncos TV. George Paton touched on his draft plans in a press conference later last week, just a few days ago, and so we're doing a little bit of recapping here as we get closer to the NFL draft. Obviously, George Paton kind of keeping things close to the chest, but one thing he has talked about is a potential extension for Bradley Chubb and Courtland Sutton. We'll go and throw that quote on the screen right now saying, quote, "They're 2 of our core guys and we want them here a long time. We're not going to address that until after the draft. We're strictly focused on the draft, but those are 2 of our guys." So we'll kind of break down each one individually here, but obviously this is a big deal moving forward as we look a little bit after the draft. You know, Bradley Chubb, Courtland Sutton, 2 guys who have just blossomed in the last couple years in their time with the Broncos. And we'll start with Bradley Chubb, a guy who really shone right off the bat in his rookie season. 12 sacks, really strong first season. Dealt with that injury 4 games into his second year in the NFL, torn ACL, and missed the majority of that season. Came back and was pretty solid this year. Not the dominant presence he was the first year, just because Von Miller was out as well. Really took a lot of the attention away and really gave teams opportunities to lock in on Bradley Chubb. But as you look at our linebacker depth chart right now, there's no understating the importance that he brings and that Von Miller brings, that pass rush on the outside. Those 2 guys really feed off each other and complement each other really well. Similar styles in a sense, but Chubb also a little bit more of a physical presence, trying to run you down, run you over. I think he's only going to grow moving forward in his 4th year. He has a 5th-year option. However, Courtland Sutton, as a 2nd-round pick, will not have a 5th-year option and technically would hit unrestricted free agency after next season. Now, I think that's extremely unlikely when we look at the first couple seasons that he's had in Denver. But Bradley Chubb and Courtland Sutton, 2 players that George Paton will have to make decisions on eventually. Now, we look at Courtland Sutton's time in the NFL, came right off the bat as a 2nd-round pick, struggled a little bit with the catches. You look at that, about half his receptions compared to his targets, but 700 yards and 4 touchdowns, a solid rookie season, and then really broke out as the Denver Broncos' #1 wide receiver in 2019. 72 catches on 124 targets, over 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. But then last season hit and he dealt with the injury of his own, an ACL tear. In his only game of the season, already had 3 catches for 66 yards. He's going to be their #1 receiver. Unless Jerry Jeudy breaks out and decides to become a top 5 wide receiver in football, I think you can expect Courtland Sutton to take that next step. And I'd be really surprised to see George Paton, A, decline the 5th-year option on Bradley Chubb, a little over $12 million guaranteed, but there's no doubt I think he'll be back. And then B, letting Courtland Sutton walk after just 4 seasons, their 2nd-round pick in 2018, and Chubb, their 1st-round pick in 2018. I think those guys will be around here for the long haul. All right, we'll wrap it up with this question. If you had to pick one everything out on the line. You can't keep both. You can't let both of them walk, obviously. But if you had to keep one, who would it be? Type your C for Bradley Chubb or type your S for Courtland Sutton. That's a tough decision. I think I'd probably go with Bradley Chubb right now just because of Von Miller's age and the growing presence that he's going to have on that Broncos defense. But yet again, get your votes in the comments section.